Hey everyone, I'm Mayara and I'm back with you today with my big friend Stella. And Stella is a neuroscientist and a meditation teacher, between other big things that she does. It's really amazing work that can be very helpful for this that we've been talking about with supporting our teenagers that are struggling with anxiety, depression. So I'd like to just bring her up so we can get direct to it. How are you doing, my beautiful friend?
I'm doing good. Thank you, Mariana. And thank you for the invitation.
Yes, absolutely. It's nice to have you here. So, I'd like to start with you explaining a little bit more of what you do and what got you into studying, the mind and all this stuff that you now practice and support other people with their practices.
Mhm. Yeah, as you mentioned, I'm a neuroscientist and a psychologist. And during my years studying and researching topics of, how the brain works, what I was always fascinated by is how we can adapt to new things, how we change and how we learn in life. And I looked at it like, for example, how we adapt to new environments, how we adapt to new fashion styles. And I think especially when you're young, and you pick up all these trends much faster than adults or later on in life, where you may have found your style and you're more rigid. So there's really a difference also in our brains between teenagers and grown-ups. And also, what I was also researching on is like how we are getting expertise, and this is also plastic. Our brain is plastic, so it is able to change throughout life. But there are times like as a child, but also as a teenager, where we are more malleable. The brain is changing more than later on, and this is a big chance, but also we can see it with caution, because like what we do and grow up with is really shaping our later life.
Mm, mm-hmm.
And yeah, so and this change for, this fascination for change and for the plasticity of our brain brought me eventually to neurofeedback. And so neurofeedback um, is a method to train the brain. And in my practice, we use different methods which help to change, problematic thinking patterns or behavioral patterns. Like being too anxious or having experienced trauma, having difficulties to concentrate, like ADHD,
Mm,
um, or also depression. All that has its correlate in the brain and can therefore also be changed via brain training.
mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I'm fascinated with this stuff. I love it. I have been researching to do my own work, all of this stuff that you're talking about, because of all the conditionings that I bring on from, my growing up years. Like there was a lot of dysfunctional beliefs that were given to me, like about everything about life. And as an adult, I started researching this stuff also because I came across this type of information on how can we rebuild the brain pretty much through repetition. So we've been talking about this, the power of the repetition of the new belief. So how would you say, um, from your professional standpoint, how would you describe this power of repetition on the new belief in the brain? How that could be helpful for the teenagers that we are directing today that are struggling with, their mind, their thought patterns.
yeah, so like I said, especially in the teenage years, our brain is still malleable,
Mm,
right? So it's more open to change. But also, what we are thinking as a teenager is really shaping how we think and behave later in life. Because there are certain parts of the brain which are in huge, change and adaptation and readjustments as a teenager. And one thing is the more like global stuff, like how the neurons, the cells in the brain are processing with each other. And so when the brain is matured, this processing is faster. But it's also reducing the complexity. So only the pathways are kept which are used often. So what you use often as a teenager is defining your later life. So that's also like repetitive thinking or behaviors will therefore shape your later life. And it's also like what is also still maturing is the frontal areas of the brain. And the frontal areas of the brain is really like here the frontal cortex. It's about executive function, about planning the future, decision making, but also controlling emotions or maybe inhibiting inappropriate behavior. And as the teenage brain really, grows and matures, this doesn't really work that easily at times. And, teenager may be a little moody. They may yell at you all of a sudden, but it's part of the brain maturing. Then you have the limbic system, which is about emotions. That's also growing, maturing. So it's about how you respond with emotions, but also the hormone system is still growing, maturing. And this all really, makes up this wonderful but also challenging years as a teenager, right? So it's kind of explains, why teenager may take more risk or more moody, and maybe just think differently as their parents.
Yeah. And it's interesting when you say like the repetition of whatever they are thinking, it's kind of molding how their future will be. It's interesting because, like in my case, for instance, a lot of the repetition, the things that we repeat as teenagers, it's not even our beliefs. It's the stuff that they told us when we were on that imprinting period from like 0 to 6, 7 years old. They told us a bunch of stuff that was their belief. And we just take it in at that age as everything is truth, right? So a lot of that also can be repeated through the years, throughout teenage years also. That happened to me, and it was causing a lot of anxiety, the repetition of all those things that were told me on those imprinting years. And so and then it becomes this mold, like you were saying, for adulthood based on things that are not even truth, which is crazy.
Absolutely. And it's always good and bad things which we get from our parents. And it's actually even in our DNA, because they did some experiences, I believe, with mice where they, I think, traumatized, unfortunately, some mice, because when they went to a certain place, they got an electroshock or some negative stimulus. So they wouldn't go there, of course, anymore. But even their children and children's children who never had experienced that themselves, they never went to this corner because they, through their DNA, had learned that that's not a good thing. So this is one thing. So really the DNA, then it's also like what experienced your mother during your pregnancy, right? So this is a whole big influence, what happened there. And then growing up, as you said, you're very open. Also the brain waves are different, so different frequencies are more prevalent when we are younger, which make us more like a sponge. We really absorb, and we absorb very good behavior, but also maybe more problematic behavior, which we then later on want to change again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen this that you're talking about, that it passes through the genes on the DNA, the fears and that stuff. That book, The Gene Keys, talks a lot about that. It mentions even like from people that have fears from, you know, the war or whatever has happened, and then they do researches with the offspring and you know the descendants from those people, and they do inherit, like if someone dies, you know, drawn and or drawn and survives but have that fear of water, how that is passed on through the DNA to the other generations. It's very interesting. Um, so I wanted to talk a little bit about also the meditation, like the changes that occur in the brain once you do the regular meditations. My meditation teacher used to talk about this all the time, like the physiological, you know, changes and emotional changes, how it's impressive. Like if we're going to list the benefits, it's just all over the place, the benefits that come from regular meditation. So would you talk a little bit about that with us too?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, meditation is basically a self-guided regulation of the brain, or plasticity of the brain. So also your brain changes already after like 10 hours of meditation, not in one play, not in one piece, but
Yeah.
in practice. And one benefit is really the emotional balance you get. You get more emotional balanced. You get your stress resiliency is getting better. Your immune system is getting balanced and improves, and so on. Your focus gets better. So there are many very good and beneficial things you can get out of a regular meditation practice. But it's also, we also have to be a little bit cautious that it's not really for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Because, for example, some kids have difficulties concentrating. So if you ask them to sit down for 20 minutes and basically don't think, or just repeat them, a mantra, so like a word or word phrase, the kid will get frustrated because it's not able to. Or if you had, trauma in your life, sometimes if sitting down can come, it's difficult, because at that point, all these problematic emotions can come up. So you really have to see, for whom it is. But in general, it's a great thing to do. It's easy. I remember, I think I was 17 when I started meditating the first time, and I just did it 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the evening, and that made a huge difference for me. So that was nice. And I was still in, this growing up phase I mentioned with my parents back then. And it was difficult for me with my parents, of course, because I was a teenager. And when I remember when I started meditating, all of a sudden the problems seemed to just keys go away. I was like, oh wow, that's nice. So yeah, that's really amazing
That's a great
opportunity.
point. Yeah, that's a great point. Like how things seem to just settle, you know, in all areas of your life, just because you are taking that time to just go within, be quiet. And I love this point also about not being for everybody. So people talk about that with me, how difficult it is sometimes to just sit and do nothing if you're not used to it, and especially like you said, if you're coming from trauma. And one of the things that I talk about, it's like the baby steps. Maybe you can go for like a mindful walk meditation. You can go walking in
Absolutely.
nature, right? Being very mindful of, you know, the steps you're taking, like everything that's happening in your environment, taking in the trees, the birds, the sounds. I find that to be a very easy way to kind of get into it and start kind of like getting familiar with meditation and then grow from there, right? It starts so
Absolutely.
easy.
Yeah, like, yeah, walking meditation. Another thing can be doing, hatha yoga or qigong. That's also kind of like steps before meditation, or a different way, or just meditating for short time, because
Mhm.
it's in generally um, better to meditate rather short, but being really focused and aware. than, trying to sit there for 20, 30 minutes, an hour or two, and then just daydreaming. And then you don't really get the benefits from the brain, or in the brain and in your behavior and thinking, because those happen when you really are concentrating, and when you're concentrated, aware, and conscious during meditation, and when you are able to really calm down a little bit.
Yeah, being present in the moment, right? But an easy way to bring yourself back to the present moment that I teach is that just like pay attention to the breath. Sometimes the thoughts start occurring and it just makes everything kind of crazy, like you were talking about, especially coming from trauma or dealing with this stuff that we're talking about, the anxiety, depression. The thoughts just starts overflowing. And once you come back to the breath, it seems like the thoughts is slow down because there's no attention to them. The attention is just on the physical coming in and out of the breath. It was really helpful for me on the beginning too. And I did exactly like you said. I would sit for like 2 minutes and that's it. I just feel on the beginning until I got used to it.
Yes, absolutely. What can also be very helpful is using a mantra. And a mantra is just a word or a word phrase. And it can be any positive which resonates with you. It can be peace, it can be love, it can be, if you're spiritual, you can use God or Om. And I always emphasize using love, because it's so hard for oneself, for mostly everyone, basically, to just love oneself without any judgments, right? Unconditionally. And if you have that love for yourself, a lot of problems keys with it. So it's just, if you, close your eyes and sit still, and then you breathe in love, and then, feel how this love is, really going into all your being, and each cell in your, whole body and mind. Then when you breathe out, it just settles in your being, and then you breathe in again. So it's very simple, which you can do, sitting in a bus, or sitting in the car. So that's really a nice practice.
Yeah, I love that. I love like the simplicity of it. And like, to me, love is acceptance, right? And it seems to me like when we see the teenagers struggling, having some sort of anxiety or that mental cycles going on, it seems like there's resistance against something, right? Like they don't feel safe outside or socializing with people or whatever it is, but there's some sort of resistance going on. And I feel like the meditating on love, like you're saying, it brings acceptance. And so I feel like that calms us in a level so deep that I feel like it allows for that acceptance also for whatever it is that is bringing the tension, the anxiety attack, or whatever it is. Kind of like, no, it's okay to socialize, to be around people, or to do whatever it is that triggers their anxiety. So yeah, I find that to be very helpful too. And so for wrapping us up, I would like for you to share with us, how can people find you if they are interested on going deeper in these practices that you do, that you are teaching us today? How would they find you, where you're at?
Yes, absolutely. So we have a website, which is www.ipi.global. So IPI is for Infinite Potential Institute. So ipi.global. And you find our email or contact there. And the easiest email is just info@ipi.global. And what we do different methods. One is we teach meditation, like you said already. And our main, one of our main things is doing neurofeedback, and that's really training the brain. And what we do there, so as I said, all the anxiety, trauma, and so on has always its, it's correlated in the brain. So when someone comes to us and says, "Oh, I'm very anxious and I'm suffering from anxiety," we are measuring the brain and see whether there are markers of that anxiety, and usually find those. And when we have these markers in the brain, you can actually retrain your brain so that the limbic system, which is and the amygdala, which is connected to anxiety and emotional processing, is not overactive. So you can really train this down and calm your brain, calm your limbic system. And this, uses the plasticity of the brain, like I said before. So it's really relearning. And it's like when you're young and you grow up and you do something, right, then your mother says, oh, great, you did that well. And you get this reinforcement as well. But for example, you watch your favorite series on TV in front of you, while we measure the brain waves. But your TV series, it's kind of dark and without colors, so not that nice, right? But when your brain, for example, is calming down and you're less anxious, then the screen is getting bright. So this getting bright is the positive reinforcement. So in time, your brain will learn, oh, I want to see this series, and I get this series when I calm down and when I'm not so anxious. And so this is a very playful way and an easy way to really retrain the brain. And the great thing about neurofeedback is that it's long lasting. So when you have achieved this change in brain, in the brain activity and the brain processing and how it works, it really lasts or is stable. So that's a wonderful thing.
That's fascinating. That's really impressive. So yeah, for you guys that want to go a little bit deeper, that's ipi.global. I will put it on the description. And so thank you so much, Stella, for being with us. So before we wrap it up and close everything, any last thoughts for our parents?
Yes. First of all, I would like to offer, all of your participants and who, will watch this video, that they can go to our website and contact us. And we offer a free consultation for about 15 minutes. So if there is any, thinking or behavioral problems with you or your teenager, whatever age you are, you're happy to contact us and we will give advice. It doesn't mean that you need to, engage in our services, but we are happy to share, our opinion and our experience with you, to guide you further. And and I would also like to emphasize that, the importance of, to be aware of what we engage with and what is really our environment. So, like, for example, if you open a fashion magazine or any magazine, right, with models in it, you have these very, very thin models, which are fashion right now, which is the proposed ideal, so to say, for magazines. And if you look at them only for a minute or even a few seconds, your brain adjusts already. So afterwards, if you will look at the same body or your body again, you feel, oh, I'm a little maybe overweight, or like I have too much kilos. But that's only because your brain adapted to what you saw. And so that's just an example, but it's really everything. It's the music. What did we play? Like, are we connected to nature? Are we going for nature walks and so on? Even, what we eat, who we talk to. And all that is really, shaping us and shaping our future. So for myself, at a certain point, I just put away all the fashion magazines and I didn't look at them anymore. And I feel perfectly happy with my body right now. Not all the time, but you know what I'm meaning. So it's really important to be aware of all that.
Yes, that's beautiful. That's a perfect point for us to close. I love that you brought this up, like coming from a perspective of a neuroscientist and psychologist and everything you do, because this is so important to me when I'm teaching in my practice. How we care for our environment, how much our environment is affecting how we feel about ourselves, about the world, how we see, perceive the world. It's all, our environment is like really affecting us big time. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up from your perspective. This is perfect, perfect way to close us today. Well, yeah, thank you for being with us, Stella. I really appreciate. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
our talks regardless, but it's really nice to have you in our summit, sharing your good wisdom with our parents and teenagers that are watching the summit to learn these practices for connection and raising up from anxiety and depression to more self-confidence and calmness and peace. So yes, thank you so much for being with us. We'll talk again soon. And yeah, thank you guys for being with us. Thank you for being part of this summit. And I will talk with you guys again soon. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye bye.